Hello, hello. My name is Sir Schmuckle, and I'm going to help you set up Metal Gear Solid 4 for RPCS3. Now, this version of RPCS3 that I'm using is the master build. It is 0.0.28. It's not a specific build like I think it was called the Cypher XOF version. It's not the MGO2 build. This is for the master build from the website. So before we set up MGS4 specifically, there's a couple things you need to make sure you have. One, you need to make sure you have uh, your firmware installed correctly, which is PS3 version 4.9. I'll link that in the description. You can get that from the website. And you need to make sure you have your game installed, obviously. I can't link that. You'll have to get that on your own. But the most stable version I've been able to use has been NPUB 31633, which is the digital version of the game. So if you want to use that version, make sure you have your package and your RAP file. So with that out of the way, you also need a patch file, which I'll also link in the description. Because when you play Metal Gear, if you start it up just by itself and you try to play it, it'll crash right at the main menu. So when you have your patch file, go to Manage Game Patches. If it asks you to update, press No. If you update, it will erase your custom patch file. So don't update. And for this version specifically, you're going to want your Cellspurs Urgent Commands hack, and then followed by the version of software you're using, or firmware you're using, which is 4.9. And then you want Crash Fix and Flickering Textures Fix. And save, and then your patches are all good. Now, as far as configuring the emulator goes, you really don't have to do anything with it. But just for the sake of transparency, I'll show the settings anyway. This is all default. GPU stuff is all default. Audio, you can change the slide here for the volume, but I wouldn't mess with anything else. Like, don't try to do any of these, fancy audio formats. IO, same, leave that. You can set mouse handler to null if you really want to use mouse and keyboard, but I wouldn't recommend it. It doesn't play that well with mouse and keyboard. System, leave that default. Network, same, don't change that. Advanced, you're not going to change anything in here. Emulator, this is all optional. You can change your emulator settings here, viewport settings here. Performance overlay, you have to set that in a custom configuration. You can't do that here, so don't bother with that. Leave LLVM compile threads at 8 though. Don't change that. And GUI, same, that's all. Leave all that stuff alone. So now, assuming you got your Metal Gear Solid 4 installed, you set up your emulator correctly, you got your controller configured, which if you have a DualShock 3, 4, or DualSense, it'll automatically detect it. If you use an Xbox controller, automatically detect it. I don't know about Pro Controller, for example, a Switch controller. I never used it, so you'll have to figure that one out. But if you use any of those other ones, it'll automatically configure, so you don't even have to do anything. But you can change any of the buttons if you want. Now, assuming you got all that set up, let's change our custom configuration. Now with CPU, they should all be default settings. So you want PPU decoder on recompiler LLVM, SPU decoder recompiler LLVM, XFloat accuracy, you want that on approximate XFloat. Don't check enable SPU loop detection, and leave max power saving CPU preemptions at 0. TSX instructions disabled. SPU block size safe. Preferred SPU threads at auto. And thread scheduler at operating system, which I don't think you can change that anyway. Now over to GPU. Renderer, if you have a Vulkan compatible GPU, use Vulkan. You're going to get the best results with Vulkan. Otherwise, I believe you have to use OpenGL. Your graphics device, make sure that's your GPU. I'm using a 2080 Super. Aspect ratio, 16:9. If you're using a 4:3 monitor, change it to 4:3, but otherwise leave it. Frame limit, this is important. You want to limit it to 60. If you go above 60, which by default it'll say auto, if you leave it on auto, the game will break when it hits above 60 frames per second. Anisotropic filtering, leave that on auto. Anti-aliasing, disable it. It should be auto by default, but you want to disable it. Leaving that on will make the game way more unstable, and it will crash, especially in Act 2 and Act 4. Those acts specifically do not like anti-aliasing. Z-call accuracy, leave that on relaxed, or change it to relaxed. I believe it's on relaxed by default, but you want it on relaxed. Shader quality, low. Don't mess with 3D. I wouldn't trust that on any game, to be honest. It's so unstable. Your resolution, now that's up to you. I play at 75% resolution just to make sure no issues come up. But you can really have that at any resolution you want. For PS3 parity, I would suggest leaving it at 720. But there's plenty of YouTube videos where people are playing it at like 4K 60, so in the end, that's really up to you. Resolution scale, leave that default, or change it, however, depending what your resolution scaling that you choose to use is. Output scaling, leave it at bilinear, and leave the sharpening strength by at 50%. Shader mode, async, multi-threaded. Number of shader compiler threads, auto. Now for additional settings, you want to check right color buffers and multi-threaded RSX. You can experiment with asynchronous texture streaming, but you need a really good CPU GPU combo to do that. My CPU isn't the greatest. I have a 7700K. But obviously I have a 2080 Super, so I have a decent GPU. So I don't use asynchronous texture streaming, but I do use multi-threaded RSX. Audio, again, just mess with the volume slider if you want, but otherwise leave everything by on default. IO, if you want to use mouse and keyboard, like I said, you need this on null, I believe. But I wouldn't recommend emulating a DS3 with the mouse and keyboard. Just not good. System, default. Network, leave that at default. Now advanced, make sure accurate DFMA is checked, which should be by default. I don't think you can change that. Accurate RSX reservation access, PPU non-Java mode fix-up, and PPU LLVM precompilation. That's what you want checked in core. Firmware libraries, you want libvdec.sprx checked. That's so you can watch the FMVs in the game. If you don't have that checked, it will crash at the FMVs. GPU, leave that off. All those off. Vulkan Q scheduler, safe. This one is important. You want RSX FIFO accuracy at atomic. By default, it should be at fast. You want that at atomic. Exclusive full screen mode, leave that at automatic. Now, driver wake up display, you shouldn't have to mess with because you set your accuracy at atomic, so it's by default going to use a faster wake up display. But occasionally you'll get a little crash message at the bottom of your RPCS3. It'll say something along the lines of try increasing your driver wake up display. Delay, I'm sorry, I keep saying display. If you get that, then you can experiment with that, but I just changed it to atomic. I never got that message again. V-blank frequency, change that to 240 hertz. It doesn't matter if your monitor supports 240 hertz or not. That's just how you're going to get the game to run at best. Don't increase it past 240. You can increase it lower than that, but like I said, you can decrease it lower than that, rather. I think I said increase. Just leave it at 240 for best performance. Clock scale, leave that at 100. Maximum for Spurs thread, unlimited default, and sleeper times accuracy, you sleep only. That should be default. Now, emulator, like I said, most of this is up to you. Doesn't really matter what you use. I have the performance overlay on, so when I do my run in a moment, we can see how the game runs throughout. Leave the compile threads at 8. Don't change that. And that should be good. That's your custom configuration. So now we're gonna switch over to the game and we're gonna do a run. Where'd my window go? That's the real question. There it is. I won't be running with splits, just because this is mostly just to show that, yes, the game works with the settings provided. I have the performance overlay on so we can see when frames are going to die and whatnot. Now, again, I'd just like to point out that the version I'm using is NPUB 31633, which is the digital version of the game. If you use BLUS or BLES or any other version, your stability results may vary. I can't promise that those versions will be better or worse. So, Liquid Easy, we're just going to do a Liquid Easy run and go through the game, see how it plays, and go from there. Now, I have a Liquid Easy speed run, the Dead Zone. I have a Liquid Easy speed run on my channel that you can watch. And it is from start to finish. No crashes. And on my Twitch channel, I have done multiple speedruns of the game, start to finish. Also no crashes. At least not in between. It does crash every now and then. That's one thing to keep in mind, is this emulation is not perfect. Chances are it will crash on you at least once. There's just no getting around it, unfortunately. But it is at a point now where it's playable from start to finish on the master build, which is big. The big thing. Cutscenes will tend to perform better than the in-game for you, honestly. But cutscenes are a little more unstable than the gameplay is, so if you're watching the cutscenes again, it may crash on you more often than not. we'll just go through Act 1 at the moment. I'm not going to do a full game speed run, because like I said, you can find a full game speed run on my channel. So we'll just do Act 1, just to show you how, for the most part, how most of the game is going to run for you. There are places where it runs better and where it runs worse, and if you look at the ground, for example, it'll run better for you, but it's not substantially better. It is in some areas, like Act 3, you can get good results by just staring at the ground. But, that ain't for me. Now, a big thing to note with RPCS3 is that it's way more of a CPU eater than it is a GPU eater. So if you have a weak CPU, then you're gonna have harder problems than if you have a weaker GPU, honestly. You don't need that, we're just doing Act 1. But yeah, like, I'd recommend at least having 4 cores in a CPU. Like, I did this with a 6700K before, which I think has 2 cores, but it might have 4. So I'd recommend at least 4 cores. And for speed, I'm not really sure, so I'm not gonna I'm not gonna give you information I'm not too sure about. But my CPU at the moment is overclocked to 4.2 gigahertz, I think, so. Take that how you will. Now this guide is going to be used for setting up for both speedrunning and for casual play. If you just wanted to play this casual, I mean, it's going to be the same settings either way. But I will be putting this guide up on speedrun.com. So if anyone else needs setting up or recommended settings when they speedrun, then you'll have it. And also keep in mind, some of the performance issues you see on my gameplay right now, they aren't always as reflective of my experiences when I don't have OBS open, because OBS is also a CPU eater. Like, at the moment, it's using 7% of it, along with, as you can see in the top left, the obnoxious amount that RPCS3 uses. So if you're live streaming or recording or, you know, trying to get a speedrun out there, you might get somewhat worse performance than if you were just casually playing. Just as a heads up.
Okay, Snake.
And as you can hear too in the game, there's plenty of audio issues in the game. Music will cut out. Otacon hardly ever comes through. Most background noises will cut out, and all you can hear is Snake's feet sometimes. It's definitely not a perfect emulation, but it's miles and miles ahead of what it was even like 2-3 years ago, so. We'll take what we can get for now. Good one. Yeah, all these voice clips are just not working, as you can see. Definitely recommend practicing Act 1 on a PS3 if you have access to the hardware, because there's a lot of audio cues you can use here that'll help you more than the visual cues. I've done this enough that I can accurately tell when and where I'm supposed to set everything off. I don't think I've ever stuck the sleep mine there before. Nice. We didn't get a troll, Johnny. You know, I wanted to experiment with that again. Oh, she didn't die. I wanted to see if you could throw a stun down there and get those two before they jump on the wall. Damn. We can get Ed. If you get Ed and Jonathan there at the same time, you can skip waiting for them to get into that room together. Nice. So when I'm playing this on stream, I'll have Spotify or something going in the background because the audio is just so broken, which is unfortunate, but it is what it is, you know. I'd rather take broken audio than anything else that's broken, so. Oops, that was run the wrong way. Alright, we're coming up on the end of Act 1. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I hope you found it informational, and it helps you if you decide to play and or run Metal Gear Solid 4. 1712, not awful. Yeah. I think that's gonna do it. If you have any questions, please leave a comment. I'll happily help best I can. Check the description for anything like I mentioned, like patch file and link to the PlayStation website for your firmware file. But I will see you guys next time. Bye.